everybody, it's Manicka and welcome to my channel where I help social workers, therapists, and helping professionals deepen their level of self-awareness and increase their competence and confidence in the profession. Y'all, it has been so long since I recorded a video. I'm so excited to be back. And for today's topic, we're going to be talking about 8 steps that you can follow if you're ready to start your private practice. So if you're interested in this topic, then please keep watching. So if you've been following me for a while, then you already know that I have a mental health private practice. And if you've not been following me, you can watch this video right here where I talk more about starting my private practice. What you might not know are the actual steps that I took to start the practice. So what I wanted to do today is I wanted to break it down into 8 easy steps. Well, I don't know if the steps are actually easy, but I think it's a good way for you to remember how to start your private practice. And I broke that down into 8 steps. So I wanted to break the 8 steps down into 3 phases for you to remember. So phase 1 is setting up your business foundations. Phase 2 is preparing to see your first client. And then phase 3 is client management. So we're going to get into each one of those stages individually. So these are the steps that I took to start my private practice, but you want to take into consideration your state requirements as well as any licensure specifications. So if you're a counselor, marriage and family therapist, or a social worker like me. Number 1 is naming and checking availability. You want to decide on a name for your practice. When I first started my private practice, I was working independently for an agency, seeing clients, and I knew that I had a desire to start a private practice. So the first thing I did was think about what is the name that really embodies the type of company that I want to have, the type of services that I want to offer. And I knew that I wanted to talk a lot about the brain-body connection. I also wanted to work with clients intergenerationally because I primarily served African American clients. I knew that I was going to be working with grandparents, aunts who are raising relatives. So I wanted all of that to be in the name that I came up for my company. Once you decide on a name, you want to check your Secretary of State's website to make sure that the name is available. There's nothing worse than coming up with an amazing name that you think really meets the target demographic that you want to be working with, and it really embodies the work that you want to do, only to find that the name is taken. So make sure that you visit your Secretary of State's website to know that this is a name that you can absolutely use. And then you want to go on social media and check any handles that you plan on using. So if you want to be on YouTube, make sure you check that. If you want to promote on Instagram, make sure that you check that the name is available on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, anywhere you plan on marketing your practice, make sure that you check that those handles are available. Number 2 is legal setup. Now, I'm not an attorney or a lawyer, but you want to make sure that you register your business with the state where you plan to practice. So again, you would visit your Secretary of State's website and walk through the process of setting up your business structure. Now, only you know the type of business structure that you want to have, so make sure you select a business structure that fits the type of practice that you want to have. You want to obtain your EIN number for tax purposes. Now, I see a lot of people do this backward because the EIN is free and to register your business costs. In my state, it's about $99, but you don't want to do these in reverse. You want to think of starting your practice like having a baby. You're birthing an idea. And when you birth a baby, the first thing that the baby gets is a birth certificate. The second thing that the baby gets is a social security number. So you want to create your business in that order. You want to register your business with the Secretary of State, which is creating your birth certificate or your certificate to operate your business within the state. And then you want to get your EIN number, which is essentially the social security number for your business. Number 3 is insurance and identification. You want to secure malpractice insurance. Now, you can go through a variety of different agencies to get malpractice insurance. Because I already had homeowners insurance and car insurance, I just went with the company who already offered those insurances, and then I was able to get my malpractice insurance through that company with a discount. Oftentimes they have malpractice insurance that's associated with the board that you're credentialed with. So for me being a social worker, I would check the NASW. If you're a counselor, you'll check that board. Marriage and family therapist, you'll check that board. And oftentimes there's an association that offers malpractice insurance, or there's another low-cost solution that can work for your situation. So just make sure you check around. Number 4 is credentialing. So in this phase, you still can't see clients yet. So what you want to do is make sure that you get your NPI number. Your NPI is your National Provider Identifier, and what that number does is it identifies and distinguishes your practice from other practices in the state and separates it from other practices throughout the country. So you don't have to get multiple NPI numbers. There are different types that you can get. So there's a type 1 NPI or a type 2 NPI. Depending on the type of practice that you plan on running, you can just have the type 1. But if you plan on registering your NPI through your LLC or however you set up your business structure, then you will get the NPI too. There's also a group NPI, so you want to make sure that you do your due diligence and figure out which NPI type that you'll need to start your practice. And I'll leave a link to where you can go to get your NPI number. It's totally free, and up to this point, we've only paid for our LLC or whatever your business structure is. And we've also paid for our malpractice insurance. So phase 2 is preparing to see your first client, and what you want to do in this phase to register with CAQH. And this is going to help streamline insurance credentialing if in fact you do want to take insurance. And if you serve primarily African American clients like I did, or if you work in a low income community where people will primarily be paying with insurance, this is definitely the route that you want to go. So setting up your CAQH is a very lengthy process. It takes about maybe an hour to an hour and a half, and it requires that you list out all the locations that you're going to be practicing, any job that you've ever worked. So you want to make sure that you have maybe your curriculum vitae or your resume handy so you can write out all the positions that you've held. It's going to ask you if you need any clearance for a hospital, if you're going to be admitting any patients or clients into the hospital. So it'll ask you that as well. It's also going to ask for you to upload your malpractice insurance. That's why you want to make sure that you complete that step first. So again, I would say set aside about an hour to an hour and a half to upload all the information and documents that you need for CAQH. And again, this process is free. 5 is physical or virtual office space. Find a physical office location or to sign up for telehealth platforms. Now, when I first started, it was pre-COVID and telehealth was not as big as it is now. So I was able to locate a physical office space, and I was able to get an amazing deal in my local community. So that's where I started my practice. The space wasn't even finished yet. I found a very affordable space. It wasn't even an office space. It happened to be like a conference room where they will host meetings. And I was able to have the landlord lease me out the space. And while I worked on getting all the other offices set up, I only set up one office and had that operational while I was in construction in all the other parts of the office. And I can maybe put some pictures up here for you all to see what it was like when I first got started. But yeah, I started out in one room with one chair for me, one chair for my clients, and a small desk. So it doesn't take a lot to get started. You just have to believe that you can do it and put in that initial legwork. Now that we're post-COVID, we have so many options for teletherapy. You don't have to have the overhead of having a physical office space. So now you have options such as BetterHelp, Talkspace, Headway, Sondermind. There are so many options available for you. And if you would like to look into BetterHelp or Headway, and I'll leave a link below if you want to try out any of those platforms. I've literally tried every single platform. If you all want me to do a video reviewing the different platforms and which ones I like the best, I can absolutely do that. But it's so easy to get started in telehealth. So you can click the link below if you'd like to see what options you have available for telehealth. 6 is banking and finance. You want to open a dedicated business account to manage all of your business finances. What I did is, so I wouldn't get my cards mixed up, I had my personal account opened at one bank, and then I opened my business account in a separate bank. You absolutely want to be able to keep your finances separate, and having those two different bank accounts is going to help you do that. So when you go to set up your business account, you want to take your certificate that you receive from the Secretary of State. You want to take your EIN number, some type of identifier for you to be able to set up the account. And if you already have your location, you also want to identify the location that you're going to be operating from. And then if you decide that you want checks or anything for your business, then you'll put that location on your business checks, and then your communication from your bank will go to your business location. Okay, so you're well on your way to having an operational practice. So now we're in phase 3, client management. So before you see any clients, you want to make sure that you have your infrastructure of your business set up. We did your business foundations, meaning getting the name, making sure that it's secure, making sure that you're able to use it in your state. or online, but now you want to think about your internal processes. How are you going to manage seeing clients once they start rolling in? 7 is communication and client intake. You want to have a professional email system. We're not using Gmail, we're not using Yahoo, Hotmail, none of those things. We have a professional email that's set up with our business name. So you want to make sure when you choose your business name, choose something that's short. I made the mistake of choosing a long business name. So when you type out the email for the business, it's super long. So make sure that it's something that people can remember. And then you want to have your email attached to it where it's the name at, where it's either maybe help or support at yourbusinessname.com. Getting a domain name, that's something separate. You don't have to do that just starting out. As long as you have social media or you're on a directory or have a way for people to contact you, you don't need to purchase a domain name just yet. And by domain name, I mean the name that people search when they're on Google looking for your practice. But if you're on a reputable directory, you don't need that at this point. So setting up your email, I use Microsoft. I really wanted the professionalism. It was linked to Outlook. I wanted the professionalism of that. So having Outlook, PowerPoint, Excel, all the Microsoft suite, I just purchased that all together for my business and then had that associated with my business name. And once you set up your email system, you want to have all of your client intake forms to gather your client information for when they come into your practice to schedule appointment. So with the intake process and the forms that need to be created, this can be a fairly lengthy process. So I've created some intake forms for you here. So if you wanted to use my link, I've put together the intake forms that I use. Again, you might want to consult a lawyer. And these are the intake forms that I use in my practice. So it's going to give you the registration form for an adult as well as for a child. It's going to give you your consent form, your privacy policy, confidentiality, electronic communication, telehealth consent. So it's about maybe 11 pages of intake forms. So if you want to check those forms out, then I'll leave a link in the description. And finally, step 8 is electronic medical records and payment. So step 8, you want to invest in a HIPAA compliant EHR system to manage, organize, and store your client record. This is going to be one of the most crucial parts of your practice. There are so many options out there to choose from, but a few of the popular ones are Simple Practice and Therapy Notes. I personally use Therapy Notes and I like the streamlined process of it, that I'm able to schedule my clients there. I'm able to send communication through email. I'm able to upload forms and documents. I'm able to scan in documents. So if you wanted to have a 100% or 98% paperless practice, you absolutely could do that by using a really good EHR software. And that brings me to the last step in this phase, is being able to take payments. So with Therapy Notes, there's also a feature in there where you're able to take payments. So that's great. If you don't have Therapy Notes or Simple Practice, you want to stay away from things like Venmo, Cash App, taking payments that way. I would recommend Stripe, Squarespace, or PayPal. PayPal isn't HIPAA compliant that I know of, so I would probably even stray away from that and probably learn how to use the features within Simple Practice or Therapy Notes. But the goal of starting the practice is to be profitable in the practice. So you definitely want to have a quick and easy way to take insurance payments or payments from your private pay clients. Either way, if you follow these steps, you'll have the basic operations that you need to get started. Now, this isn't where it ends. This is only the beginning. We still haven't talked about setting up your internal policies and procedures if you're going to hire staff. So all of those things are separate. Also, the belief in yourself, which is one of the biggest things that we probably should have started this video with saying. You can absolutely do this. You can absolutely start a practice. This is only one way that you can use the expertise and the knowledge that you have to be able to level up in your career and to level up your income. But know that private practice isn't the only way. If this is where you want to start so you can move out of that 9-to-5 corporate grind, that's what I did so that I was able to transition out. But now that I've been online, I've been able to explore a lot of different options as it relates to increasing my income. But if this is where you are and this is where you're starting, then I wish you all of the best on your journey. And I hope that you find these 8 steps helpful. If you would like to see more videos or content like this, please like, subscribe, or share, or leave me a comment in the comment section if there's something that I left out, or if it was something helpful that you did when you started your private practice, or if you have any questions about the process. I would love to hear from you. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, be well.